Okay, so I believe that guy's in there pretty good. And now we'll take the other one and put a little bit of antifreeze on it. Get the oil out of the way. And again, you want to keep the open side toward the fluid you're sealing. And I'm going to take a slightly bigger socket. I'll get one that's bigger still. Okay, and that is flush. So if you were following BMW's recommendation, you would have put grease between the, after you put the first seal in before you put the second one in. Okay, and that's it. The seals have been replaced. Now, what do you lube this guy with? Well, you lube him with the antifreeze and oil, so whatever. And that slides back in there through the other seal. Okay, and the washer goes on, and the pin goes in, and the drive gear lines up on the pin. Okay, and there you go. There's the water pump. Oh, one more thing. There's an O-ring that goes on the water pump cover. You may or may not need to replace that. That's a good part to have on hand before you start this. But you know, if it leaks, all you're going to lose is some antifreeze when you go to change it. You don't have to pull the whole side cover off, and it's just the 3 bolts that hold that cover on. So now we're going to go about trying to stick this thing back on the bike. Okay, these gaskets you can reuse if you don't tear them up. So the trick to that is you want to have some oil on the sealing surface of the gasket. Doesn't have to be a lot, just wet with oil. And it doesn't have to be fresh oil, but you don't want oil with crunchies in it. This gasket's actually been reused a bunch of times, and it's still good. He said, risking bringing the wrath of Murphy.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is the rack that goes into the center of the clutch, and you can see how it spins around. And this is kind of the hard part of putting this cover back on. This is the clutch release shaft, and you can see that this shaft kind of makes an angle, so this thing needs to sit like this. But the thing is, when I go to put the cover on, it's not going to mesh. So you need to hold this in place while you put the cover on. So the way to do that is just get a big blob of grease, because the clutch isn't going to worry about the grease. Put a blob of grease in there, and hopefully that's thick enough to hold it in place long enough to do what you want to do. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Now the other thing is, this guy is going to pull the cover on. So you want to have that all the way forward, and you need to watch the shifter shaft. Okay, and this is where you kind of have to hold your mouth right. Did I do that backwards? I did. Okay, so I'm going to pull it on if you have it going the right way. Okay, the gear on the water pump also has to mesh. So a lot of things to try to mesh here. I'll get my hammer again. Okay, the clutch shaft, the clutch release lever rotated a little bit, so I'm going to have to remove this lever and reinstall it. I don't want to tighten up all the bolts, because the lever is up against the side of the cover, and I'm afraid that I'll put too much stress on there if I like to put all the bolts in and tighten them up. So I'm going to remove the lever. Oh. Okay, turn it off. All right. By the way, if you ever have to replace this seal, that's what you do. You pull this lever off, and then you don't have to remove the side cover. You can actually take a like a wood screw and screw it in there and yank it out with a pair of pliers. Okay, side cover's on. Now the deal with the side cover is that there are two sizes of screw. There's long ones and short ones, and you can see that the long ones go into place where they'll hit the case, and then the short ones are going to go in all the rest of the places. And you need to remember to use the one with the washer for your ground strap, and then you just go around and you put them all in, and you want to get them in and just sort of finger tight. You don't want to snug anything down, but you want to regard the gasket and make sure that the gasket is sticking out everywhere all around, and that your holes line up before you get all the screws in there, because if you get the gasket kind of hair-lipped out, you'll have an oil leak. So I'm just going to go around and stick these screws back in. Okay. So we've got all the bolts in, and we've tightened them down. So go around one time, double check, make sure we didn't miss anything, and everybody's all tight. And then it's time to reinstall things like the shift lever and the clutch lever, and oh yeah, the water pump cover. We made sure that the starter bolts were in there and tight. Okay, so I guess I'll take the strain off of that guy, and so we've got the 3 bolts that hold this guy. Oh yeah, there's that O-ring. That O-ring does that funny little thing going all sorts of ways. But there's 3 bolts here, and 2 of them don't have a washer, and the one with the washer, you want to go at the bottom because that's the actual drain bolt. So we'll get these guys in. I should talk about this. That's a little piece of Tygon tubing held on with some tie wraps, and I put that on there because with the crash bars, I don't know, the hose was getting a mark on it, so I figured, you know, rather than have the hose break sometime, I'd put those guys, this on with these guys to give a little something where it could rub. Now this is the same copper gasket that's the one you need to order for the forks. And this guy is the drain for the radiator, for the cooling system. Okay, and we'll take the bolt out of the shift lever and line up with the mark. And hopefully I got it lined up right. Okay. Of course, if I didn't get it right, the shift lever is no big deal to yank off and move up a tooth or down a tooth, whatever it takes to make your little feet happy when you're shifting gears. Okay, and now you don't want to torque that too much, and you definitely don't want to over tighten this, because this is a poor design, and you'll break this here if you over tighten it. So what we're going to do with this is kind of fit it and get the clutch to act right before we put the bolt in and tighten it down. No, that ain't working. Alright, let's see if that's going to look right. Yeah, that seems like it will probably be right. So, I'm going to go get another tool. Alright, before we put the bolt in, make sure that the clutch cable is going to act right here. No, that's too much slop. So I probably could adjust it up at the top end, but in fact I think what I'm going to do is remove this thing and move it a couple of splines over. Okay, I like the way that fits. So now I can put the bolt back in. And now you don't have to drain the oil out of the bike in order to change the water pump, as long as you jack the bike up over. But you are going to have to remove the coolant, and then you want to fill up the coolant per whatever model you have's recommendation. The later bikes need to be burped. There's some kind of burp screw that, I don't know, you don't have to do it on the Classic. You just fill up the radiator and fill up the burp tank and run it through a thermal cycle and it fixes itself. So that's it for the water pump. Now we're going to